Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology Podcast, featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Oh, Jay, it was an eventful Q&A with Joy Lunch showing up.
Oh, well, good for her.
That was nice, but she showed up on the other side of it. She wasn't a panelist. She was just asking the questions, and
yeah. Well, that's okay.
I think she's slowly back in the fold, which is a good thing. But I sent you an email with all the things that we went over yesterday, and the first thing that caught my mind was...
Our
what do you think about it?
our co-host.
Recording your dreams? That's scary.
Well, quite honestly, the ability to identify in great detail is not there. That the people that have tried to identify a song don't really get the, you can listen to what they've recorded and kind of halfway think
Pink
you
Floyd.
might, yeah, and Pink Floyd does a better job,
All in all was just a break in the wall.
Well, after a few, and you don't know.
Yeah, I've never been to that extent that I couldn't tell Pink Floyd from a mashup of it,
No, but they all sound like the teachers from the Peanuts cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. And if that's the best resolution you can get, it's not so hot. So they got a long ways to go. But if you're measuring from outside the skull, you can't get good resolution. It's inherently low resolution, and to try to focus it in higher resolution is a mistake. As the EEG comes out, you lose spatial specificity. A focal thalamic column that's 2 to 4 millimeters in size, little teeny tiny pinhead of a column, you get a 6 centimeter spray on the surface of the skin as you pick up a gigantic circle. Now, it's more intense in the center than the edge, but you get it's spread, and it's attenuated. And the same thing goes on the way in, so you can't stimulate from the outside with specificity. You can't record from the outside with specificity, and other than in low resolution. And the solution for that is all of these invasive attempts that they're doing for brain-computer interface. And if you're what's the technical term? If you're effing up the brain with the intervention to try to measure it, this is not a positive thing to do going forward. It's a act of desperation. There are less invasive ways to end up measuring it than to end up sticking needles through the cortex that have little recording dots on them. The threads that they put in with Elon Musk that kills off the monkeys, this is damaging to the brain, but then the brains that they're doing it on are in a desperate circumstance, ALS and things such as that. There are less invasive approaches. Stent electrodes, a vascular stent is like an expandable cage inside of a blood vessel to open it up and you can have a stent put in that's actually a recording electrode, a little amplifier and recording electrode. So you can put in deep, stent electrodes now, and stentrodes, and those are they've been doing that for quite a while, and they're
Wait, hold on. Stentrodes? I never heard that.
yes, a stent electrode. And so, but the other one is there are people making nano amplifiers that are turned on when they're in ultrasound. An ultrasound beam can turn on the amplifier, and you can essentially float them into the brain. They're going to end up, sticking in a few spots, and and as long as they're really, really, really small, you're not going to lose too terribly much. uh, if you float a big thing and it's a stroke, a really tiny thing, and it's going to end up clogging up a little tiny blood vessel. And as long as you spread them out and they're kind of scattered around in the brain, you can then locate them, turn them on and locate them, and then create your quote montages from where they are, and you've got recording electrodes inside the brain. So that there's a lot of people doing a lot of things that are less invasive, and those are likely in the long run going to be more reasonably expected to be able to be done. There's no surgical intervention with the nanotrodes. That that you just float them in. And
Okay.
they kind of float around and you know, but there's no perfect solution yet. Um, you have to end up basically subdural on the cortex in order to end up having high resolution. Now, they can be surgically implanted. You can get a grid. It's a square piece with thousands of electrodes on it. It's a little square piece, and it's flexible stuff. You just lay it on the cortex, and there's some of them that are getting more gel-like, so that they lay on the cortex a little bit more softly.
Jay, you got to help out the video editor here and you may have to do some bad art, but if you're doing an EEG, you're doing a recording. So just that very word recording, something's being recorded and being played
Yeah,
back. So
yeah.
conceptually, I should be able to watch my dreams later on and say, oh, I can't remember what I was dreaming about. Oh, there it is. Like, is it the
You
front
may
of the
you may
brain?
be able to recognize it better than somebody else might,
But I mean,
having been there before.
but is it
And
the front of the brain, the executive part? Is it the back because of the eyeballs, occipital? Like,
they're
what is going on?
they're recording images, not your feelings about them.
Yeah,
Anyway, but the resolution is, it's a big headline,
part of
but
the
it's a disappointing outcome. They're trying, and they're getting better at recognizing if you're looking at it at a single letter. They
yeah,
can usually figure out what letter you're looking at, but it's not fast.
yeah.
You can't like look at a page and then have that page figured out by somebody having looked at your brain activity.
But if you have
You know,
somebody that's not a nerd like us, and they're like, how do you? What part of the brain is the waves coming off when you're sleeping, when you're dreaming? That I would record this stuff? Is it the front, the
for,
sides, the
for
back? What's going on?
first of all, they have to know when you're dreaming.
Ah,
Ah.
my eyeballs are spinning.
Exactly. Rapid eye movement. REM state is dream state. But it's not actually the most vivid dream-like state that you have. Hypnagogic state as you're falling asleep, or as you're waking up, you halfway wake up and you kind of doze back off. That hypnopompic state. They're more colorful, more rational storylines, dream states can be pretty freaking crazy, you can come up with some wild stuff in a dream, but the hypnagogic and hypnopompic are more like rational storylines and colorful and vivid. So if they were picking up those, they're basically in a theta frequency state. You're in stage 1 drowsiness, and you're having hypnagogic or hypnopompic states. But they're looking for REM, which is the classic identification of dream. Now, I say classic identification of dream because how do they know that you were dreaming in REM? Well, they woke people up and asked them. Well, there's Pete's in slow wave sleep. Pete, are you dreaming? Freaking give me a break, leave me alone. I was sleeping, But most of the time in REM, people reported dreaming. Some of the times in slow wave sleep, people reported dreaming. Some of the times in other, but self-report is how reliable? You have to look at the preponderance of evidence to even get an idea of what's true. So, anyway, the REM state is what usually we think of as a dream state. And during that, you're actually playing back, experiences from the day before and long-term potentiating them into memory. That's assuming you had slow wave sleep earlier in the night. You have about 6 90-minute segments of sleep. And at the beginning of the night, you have most of your slow wave sleep. Slow wave sleep, you're producing growth hormone, assuming you have a pituitary, So I don't have any of that stuff unless I take it. But if your pituitary is making growth hormone, the dendritic sprouts, the dendritic sprouts elongate, dendritic connections are enhanced, you grow new connections. Those new connections now have memories played back through them in REM. So the combination of slow wave sleep and REM sleep give you long-term potentiation. And that's how you remember what the coach taught you yesterday. If you're not sleeping well, you're not going to be an elite athlete, and you're probably not going to be elite anything. Sleep is foundational for function. And for optimum function, if you're not sleeping well, you just can't be optimum. And the sports people realize that, sports agencies realize that. The Australian Institute for Sports researched the impact of SMR training on sleep for insomnia, and they've instituted that as a standard treatment now, having done the experimentation to show that it actually worked well. But you've got to be able to sleep well to recover from the wear and tear of the workout, and to have memory consolidation of, you learn something, and that's got to be something you have going forward, not something that was a little poof in the brain today and it's gone tomorrow.
Jay, you used to run sleep labs. So, what's going on in the sleep process? Start with the slow delta waves. What's going on when you fall into sleep, and explain it for the newbies.
Well, you don't. Well, sometimes you feel like you might fall into sleep, but you step into sleep. You start out awake, and stage awake. There's something called a hypnogram, and it looks like they call it sleep architecture, and it's a little line drawing of a step graph. And if you put windows in it, it'd look like a New York skyline. So you start out in awake. Actually, above the graphic in awake is REM, Below it is stage 1, stage 2, and they used to have 3 and 4, but now it's all slow wave sleep. 3 and 4, there's no, I mean, the difference between them is not relevant. They're all slow wave sleep. Just the percentage of the record that's slow is a bit higher in stage 4 than stage 3, but they don't mean anything different. So you start out in stage awake, and if you are relaxed and you can let go of your rumination and kind of chill out a little bit and your arousal level drops, you can slip into stage 1 and you're drowsy and your alpha drops out. You're not going to be forming ongoing memories that well during stage 1. And some theta starts to happen. Now, that's the hypnagogic state, the theta state before you drop into stage 2. Stage 2, you have vertex sharp waves, which may wake you up. It's the brain's response to a sound. And if you have a good sleep spindle or SMR training gives you a sleep spindle, then you can continue to descend into stage 3, 4 of slow wave sleep. So your first cycle in the night might get you some good slow wave sleep, unless you don't have good SMR. And then you have sleep onset insomnia. You go to stage 2, boom, you're back awake. That sound that normally would allow you, your sleep spindle would allow you to continue to go into slow wave sleep, well, you wake right back up. You don't have enough SMR training or inherent sleep spindling, because you're pretty good at it usually when you're young, and you may have lost that ability because of who knows, whatever experiences, trauma, drugs, who knows what might have happened that messed up your sleep. But I have to say that elite athletes are a finely tuned instrument, and a lot of them have sleep issues, just inherent. They're wrapped awfully tight, some of them. So, twang.
And some podcasters.
So if you're wrapped that tight, you need to know how to deliberately downregulate yourself in order to get your sleep. And if you don't learn how to do that, you're never going to make it at the very high level. You may be appropriate for that level with the right circumstance, but unless you can actually maintain your sleep quality, there's no way to be in the top 1%.
A bad dream, I mean, that'll kill you. Can't you get a heart attack?
I don't know whether people end up with talk to a
Well, no, I mean,
cardiologist.
you get
How many people die in their dreams of a terror dream that gets your heart going so bad that you die? I don't know. That's not my. I never saw that in the sleep lab. I have to say,
right.
we didn't lose a single patient to a nightmare.
Duly noted. But your heart rate does take off in a bad dream, because I mean, I've seen it on my Apple Watch. I'm like, holy crap! I had a 130 heart rate in the middle of the night. What the hell is that all about?
It could also be from apnea.
Apnea.
Okay, hold your breath. And don't breathe, and your CO2 is going to go up, your oxygen level is going to be depleted, your brain is going to say, hey, I'm running a little lean, can you send me a little more? And so your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up. You're trying to keep your brain perfused with enough oxygen. When there's a dwindling supply, you have to increase the pressure and the rate of flow. Eventually, you can't provide enough, and you're either going to wake up or you're not. And the apneas do take people. My last business partner, who was the specialist in the sleep lab, passed with his CPAP device sitting on the shelf next to him, not used that night.
He didn't use it?
He didn't use it. It was there. He used it routinely. He hated the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, First of all, there's sterilization, and you got a nebulizer to keep it from drying out your air passages
Yeah.
and giving you cracked membranes. And there's this freaking mask. How attractive is your bedmate when they got this elephant snout hanging off their face? So these are not necessarily the most favorite thing. Now, if you have severe apnea, they save your damn life from hypoxic changes that increase over time. But that heart rate that zoomed high may have been a nightmare, but it might have been an apnea. And given your size, I would be looking at apnea as a possibility at least. If you
Well,
haven't if you haven't checked that out.
I got the machine. I've had one for about a year now. The sleep's been better, but from personal experience, I can remember having a dream like, "Hey, wait, I'm going to die. I don't want to die," and then getting up, and that's got to be what it is. I didn't know that till now, Jay.
Oh no.
Okay.
Uh, my sleep is iffy at best ever since the brain
Yeah.
surgery. So my condolences to those who have issues with sleep.
Yeah.
But when your sleep mechanism is basically, your pituitary is your HPA axis, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And if you have no control over your adrenals, you have to take steroids. Otherwise, your immune system just kills you outright. And
So tell me again, why do I need to dream? Like, why do I need to sleep? Is it like a wash cycle of the brain, the glia? Like, what's going on?
well, dreaming is memory consolidation. And during the night, the slow wave sleep assists in the brain's metabolic recovery, taking care of the waste, and the janitorial service picks up the trash at the curb while you're asleep. All your cells have to recover from
Is
the
it
wear and tear of the
dead
day.
brain cells? Like, what is it? What's the
Well,
trash?
hopefully there's not too many dead brain cells. Although uh, one of the best noon lunches lectures I've ever heard was from Dirk de Ritter at the TMS Society meeting, and he starts out. There's a bunch of people clinking glasses. It's a terrible venue to get as a speaker, a luncheon speech, because people are eating and there's clinking glasses and people chattering in the back of the room that don't give a rat's ass about your talk. But Dirk basically started out his talk by saying, I see people out there with glasses of wine. The glass of wine that you consume is going to destroy brain cells. We all know this, and there's going to be thousands of brain cells lost, and you could lose capacity. However, if you listen to the lecture, you're going to increase connectivity, which will more than compensate for the cells that are lost by the enhanced neural network connectivity. So basically, everybody's looking at their glass going, geez, I don't know. Think twice about the wine, but definitely listen to the lecture, So anyway, his talks are always fabulous. And
Well,
when I was on the planning committee for the TMS Society, I invited him to do a talk for the group, and he's always said, all I have to do is invite him and tell him when and where, and he'll clear his calendar and pop in. So we're all friends.
good dude.
We like to hang out together.
So the next thing that came up was somebody's brain. If you could equate that to like computer technical stats, like how many terabytes would a brain be, and can you put brains together and combine the brain power and make somebody like really smart? Then we would maybe have better politicians.
If you could connect brains together in a more direct way into a gigantic neural net, you may be able to do something with that. But at this point, the best we do is our shitty communications. You know? How well do people communicate? You know, well, let me tell you about love. Let me tell you the ways. Here's a damn book.
About our
Read it. You
exes.
still won't know, but you'll read about it. Our ability to communicate internal states is terrible. Our ability to describe outside nature is arguably okay, sort of. But the farther you get into it, the more people argue about the details. The physicists have totally different camps of how they think everything works. So, and it works whether they think about it or not.
Well, for those of us that have exes out there, the difference in communication styles between men and women, men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Hey everyone, here's a quick message from our good old buddy Joshua Moore at Alternative Behavioral Therapy.
I'm preparing to do an introduction to QEEG phenotypes. This is my first workshop on the topic, and this is just the introductory overview of the project. This is going to be very, very basic. So let's review each phenotype. We're just going to go through them one by one. If you look at the DSM-1, 2, or 3, and you look at the first chapter, it actually acknowledges that the DSM in mental health is just, quote, a descriptive adaptation, unquote. We're going to customize the interventions and tailor them to the individual's brain activity, not just applying the treatments or trainings to the individual's phenotype and maybe even their variants, but also customizing the protocols themselves to fit that person's individual unique frequency patterns. Maybe a dozen ways to have excessive energy in your nervous system, and then there's an infinite amount of ways to relate poorly to that excessive energy, which means that there is a lot of variations in what someone might call anxiety. And that doesn't mean that we're talking about the same thing when we're talking about anxiety. So complicated stuff. But when we look at a brain map, we get some basis in which we can start talking about what is this energy. Then we have to go to the client. We have to start talking to the client about what is your association to this specific kind of energy that I can see now. Then we get to care about things that insurance doesn't restrict us on. We get to care about the person in a broader way. 85% improvement in mental health report following pairing a medication with a specific phenotype. Geez. Okay, have you seen 85% in any mental health studies for any medication? I'm going to be going over a whole bunch of different types of tests, assessments, and things that can be used that have things called neurocorrelates, which you saw some of those already. Better success outcomes. That's what we really want. We need better predictive power. We need better individualization. That's what we want.
What is the difference in the communication styles in there that we continually have problems with?
See how many fingers I have up?
Yeah.
Including the thumb?
Yeah.
I'm on this one. So don't ask me questions about relations. Okay.
I didn't. I'd say communication styles. Men and women have different brains. There's different things going on, different communication styles. From my limited knowledge, I'm better off sending an email to my wife than saying something. So I send an email 24 hours in advance, and then I talk about it. That's the only way I can get something across correctly. Why is that, Jay? Is that just me?
Maybe just you. I don't know, Pete. No, you can't ask me about relational communications
Okay,
and
but the
stuff like
Koreans
that.
have the
So I'm on.
database. They've separated. There must be some type of difference there. What's going on?
There's a dramatic difference, especially as you get into the 45 and up age range, and females end up having so much more fast activity than males, and they haven't yet quite figured out exactly what the specific source of all the difference is, but they have a lot of gamma and a lot of beta, and males have kind of a quiet brain and the high frequencies with aging. So, um, yeah, but we've known that the brains are structurally considerably different on the average. There are male-like female brains, and there's female-like male brains, but in general, males have a larger left and right hemispheres. All the males in the audience are swelling with pride. Yeah, I get a bigger left hemisphere, you know. But you got a spindly little corpus callosum, and females have a well-developed corpus callosum. We should have callosal envy, you know.
And that
And the
splits the
corpus
brain.
callosum ends up communicating between hemispheres, and and the the connectivity differences when the structure is dramatically different have to end up. You have to assume that that structure is there for a freaking reason. Things don't evolve without purpose. So uh, they have better interhemispheric communication on the average than the average male has. Again, there's outlier structures, but as a general rule, males dominant left side, larger left side, females more balanced structurally and a much more interconnected brain. And it's not like we can recognize ourselves in the mirror and they can't or something. I mean the one of the tests of animals to see if they're intelligent or not is if they can recognize themselves in a mirror. The males and females are both quite capable beings and a bit of a different style sometimes, but if you can't tolerate differences in style, you're going to have a difficult life. So,
All right. So we don't get in trouble. Let's go back to sleeping. There was a question about differences between daydreaming and REM sleep. I'm guessing you daydream because you didn't get enough REM sleep. What say you?
mind wandering, daydreaming.
Yeah.
That if you get into a hypnagogic state, it's a dream-like state, but it's not REM. And during the day, if you're a bit drowsy and you go from the awake state to stage one, and you slip from just the alpha dropout into, which is a B1 in vigilance modeling, and you go to B2, B3, now you're probably having some hypnagogic imagery and the possibility of daydreaming. And again, those have more rational storylines and they're usually more colorful and perhaps reflect day-to-day activity in some fashion. But it's not like REM. And anyway,
Okay.
we end up having dream content that some people dredge back out and can recall. Some people, when they wake up, they know they were dreaming a second ago, and it was a really interesting dream, but boy, it's gone. There's just this curtain separating the unconscious world from the conscious world, and that border is kind of tiptoed across in the hypnagogic state, and you cross it fully in the REM state.
All right. I'm awake. Jay, you've talked about theta and PTSD. What's the danger in increasing frontal theta in trauma patients? Oh, there
Well,
you go.
hopefully they're not traumatized by dogs. Uh, you know, um, you're looking for a difference between what now?
Well, this is the question that came up. Theta and PTSD.
Uh,
What's the danger increasing frontal theta in trauma patients?
well, first of all, not everybody that has PTSD has theta. Uh, um, uh, uh, PTSD is going to give, there's difference in intensities of PTSD as well. You might have had trauma and your fight flight was triggered and you feel traumatized afterwards and you have PTSD. But there's others who had fight, flight, and freeze, and they have dissociation in their PTSD, and you might not if you just had fight, flight with no freeze. And so there, not everybody has the same PTSD isn't PTSD isn't PTSD. But assuming that you have PTSD because of an emotionally traumatizing experience, your amygdala has the memory and imprint of that trauma. And you're going to have PTSD type anxiety and you're going to be hypervigilant. If you've been traumatized, you got your radar up and you got your eyes open and you're looking for them because you know they're coming. And that vigilance is seen. The amygdala changes the thalamic gating when you have a primary emotion. If the emotion is anxiety or fear, you change the gating in the thalamus, and a sensory stimulus like something you see or something you hear arrives at the cortex earlier with a bigger signal. You are jumpy. Somebody who's already been traumatized, if you give them a startle stimulus, you might get them this much off of the floor. They might jump literally. But the jumpiness is essentially seen in the event-related potential. The visual event-related potential, the P100, is seen as an early large signal. So instead of seeing it when you expect to see it, it's earlier and it's a bigger wave than you expect to see. So that's a jumpy nervous system, and those individuals need to wind it down or they're going to burn out. You can't stay vigilant like that without having consequence. So we can teach them how to wind that down. And neurofeedback and neuromodulation techniques end up being quite useful for this. If you have PTSD, you probably had a fairly high arousal level and you experienced a higher arousal level from the trauma. We have to teach you how to adjust your arousal level. And that arousal level has an interaction with your emotion. If your arousal is high and your emotion is high, you're going to be extremely jumpy. And if you can wind down your arousal level, you can start to let go of some of that hypervigilance. PTSD folks quite often end up having alpha-theta style training. The alpha training gives you a calm, centered adult awareness. The theta crossovers give you access to unconscious, preconscious material. Remember I said the dream state sometimes has that curtain? Well, if you can peer through that curtain and actually see the trauma and continually still have that adult awareness, now you're not unaware of the unconscious material. You can deal with it. PTSD that you can deal with basically is something that you can end up working with in therapy. So the alpha-theta crossovers end up bringing up material that's sometimes abreactive material, very difficult to tolerate and experience. And the therapist can switch the training over to SMR, which is a recovery protocol from delving into your unconscious to centering and stabilizing. And so alpha-theta training is an art, and there's an entire book on a second edition, Alpha-Theta training in the 21st century. and I think it's quite complete. There's chapters in there from therapists and people working in the field, and I've got one in there too. And I'm a tech. I'm not qualified to have anything in anything, So, but we did work with alpha training with alcoholics back in 1972 to 74. Wrote a grant for NIH to fund, which they did not fund in 1974, for alpha training in alcoholics. In 1988, 89 is when Peniston's work was being published out of Menninger, over a decade later. So my work with alpha training in alcoholism goes back farther than Peniston by.
It's staying on theta, Jay. Is there a quote unquote good theta and bad theta? Because the question that came.
Well, let's get rid of the good and the bad. There's different kinds of theta.
All right.
There's theta, that tonic theta, persistent tone of theta that's ongoing, usually frontocentral, and that's usually associated with pathological conditions like ADD, some forms of depression that respond to stimulants as opposed to antidepressant meds. But when you have theta up front, it means that the frontal lobe is not working properly. And if you look at the reason for the theta, frontocentral theta that's persistent is usually a dopamine deficit in the striatum. And you can read about this in Yuri Kropotov's book on the EEG generators. And it's also in Steriati's 1990s position paper from the International Federation of Clinical Neurophysiology on what makes EEG rhythms. So the people agree pretty much on how that's made.
Some say frontal theta suppression always improves cognition. Do you agree, or is this overgeneralized?
Overgeneralized. It depends upon if you look before you leap, you don't make a mistake. You can have brief bursts of theta at the frontal midline, which is frontal midline theta. It's not just theta at the frontal midline. If you have tonic theta there, that's problematic. But if it's phasic, brief bursts of theta, less than a second long, and it's usually on a memory task, and the task difficulty increases the amount of theta. And that's perfectly healthy. In fact, it has positive psychological correlates of lack of worry and fear. It's probably a good thing, So training it away wouldn't necessarily be a good thing. And, how do you know one versus the other? Not from the Q, from the EEG. Brief bursts or tonic amounts both look the same when you average them. So if you look to the Q and say, "Oh, you got too much frontocentral theta," we can train that down. You might say, "Well, let me look at the data that went into making those maps." That's step one. If you haven't taken step one, if you take step two, you will fall right on your face. You have to look at what made those maps. Yeah, there's theta up front, but is it phasic or tonic? Is this just happen during drowsiness? Is this the hypnagogic state popping up during somebody's, vigilance problem? You look to see what's making things. Don't just believe maps.
All right, we'll leave theta alone, Jay, and we'll finish up with this one. I know you're going to kill me on this. Can suppressing the wrong beta range backfire? Which beta band should be avoided in training?
Well, beta has definitions that vary depending upon labs and whatnot, all the way from the upper edge of alpha at 12. But some people say, 12 to 15 is SMR. Well, most of the time it is, but sometimes it's a little slower, a little faster. But you can always tell based on sleep spindle what the exact SMR band is. But just above the SMR band is a functional beta band that you use when you activate a cortical area. If you're on a task that requires you to press a button, the motor premotor area on the left frontal area is going to light up with some beta at 15 to 18 hertz at about the time that you need to hit the button. So it's task related and it's functional beta. It's also somewhat compensatory. So the 12 to 18 range in beta may not be the range that you really need to be suppressing. Now, the 15 to 18 hertz range is also unfortunately stepped on by benzodiazepines and benzodiazepine-like sleeping medications that they make that beta frequency, which is again a compensatory rhythm. But the beta above that, 20, 25, 25, 30, beta up above 30, those frequencies are very often, if you see much power in them, they're hyperexcitable cortex. If you see a peak in the beta in the mid 20s or something, that's hyperexcitable cortex. If you see it at CZ, it's the wakefulness drive. If you see it up front, it's impulsivity hyperactivity. We've published papers about that. Martijn Arns has authorship on a couple papers on the topic. I'm on one of those. He's on two of them. Ron Swasina's database was accessed looking for beta spindles. What's the correlate of beta spindles in the EEG? And beta spindling in the EEG corresponded with insomnia as the number one correlation, and hyperactivity and impulsivity were right behind that. With a different sample with more ADD in it, Martijn found more of the impulsivity hyperactivity than the insomnia. But again, it just depends upon where that beta spindle is located as to how it manifests.
So where do we come up with these questions? Why are we talking about this? We have a Q&A every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, where we get together a bunch of nerds and fellow nerds that come in from the public that say, hey, I want to know about neurofeedback and mental health. We ask the questions, Joshua Moore, Anthony Ramos, we hash it out, and then what we don't know, we take notes, and then we finish it up here, Jay. So thank you for helping.
And then what I don't know, they take care of next week.
Yeah. Then we get somebody like Joy to come on and say, hey guys, you got it wrong. This is what you got to do.
Fine with me.
Hey, that's right. Hey, right.
No, nobody's right all the time. So.
Well, most of the time for you, Jay. And speaking of which, most of the time in October,
I've just stepped in it so many times I know where not to step.
Jay, what's going on in October for your 75th?
Well, it's my 76th, actually.
I'm sorry.
But that aside.
He's counting you.
And yeah, exactly. I'm not focused on the number, more the experience, We're getting together a group of neuroscience folks here in Suisun. We've been gathering since 2018. And the Suisun Summit this year, because of my recent surgery and the generally frivolity that happens at these events, they're calling this one Gunkelman's Island. And there'll be a lot of Hawaiian luau and Gilligan's Island jokes and goodness knows coconut bras or something.
I think that's great.
We're just as silly as can be, but the science is really solid. So, feel free to come and have a good time, but make sure you've got your science nerd hat with you, because we do screw that on pretty hard sometimes. It starts on the 8th with a reception in the evening. The yacht club we take over for 3 days or 3.5 days, have a very nice bar, and the company's fun, and so pop in for the evening, get laid, the Hawaiian lay. You can come to Suisun and get laid. Then the next morning it starts, and from or morning until evening. We go a speaker, usually a break of some sort, so you don't end up having overshadowing, where the next speaker's material makes you not remember the first speaker's material, and then the third one makes you not remember the second one. Overshadowing speaker after speaker, you cloud the ability to consolidate the memory. So we leave a little bit of a gap in between the speakers, and it allows people to get together and chat and question and take notes and
network.
Recover, step outside, get a little bit of sunshine and nature, and come back in clear-headed. But it's on the 11th, we're having a luau birthday celebration for me and fundraising for the students. By the way, we have a student who just is now a postdoc medical researcher. She just published a paper on how to get neurofeedback into more accessible circumstances clinically. A published paper as a primary author. Yeah, it'd be good. But we've been funding students for a long time, and some of those students are now no longer students. But then, I pestered students for so many years now. Some of them have been presidents of ISNR more than once. But when you have a really good time, you pay it back with dutifully to the society, and step up and do an officership, which is it's a lot of work, but it's it's valuable work. Right. So anyway, we also do angel grants where nobody applied for anything. We just sent them money. This year we did that for Mark Jones's students. There's 8 students that got together, and they're doing a brain-computer interface, dry sensor that they downloaded the 3D printing of the headsets and everything. So they've done quite the major project, and they've learned a great deal in the interim. But we sent them a couple $1,000 just to. Which doesn't go very far with 8 students. We're cheap. What can I say? They should have gotten 8,000 instead of 2, but we just have a little budget of donations. So.
Well, that's great stimulus, Jay.
It's good to get the students funded.
That's
so.
Right.
And we're going to finish it off. Lee Steinberg's going to give the final address and kind of put things into perspective for folks with his experience. And the Sunday morning, everybody's going to be leaving, but there's actually students that are going to get together and write up the entire meeting. What was presented by whom and about what. And we've done this before, and this actually goes into the journal. So we're trying to get the presentations and discussions and everything out and published. So,
be there or be dysregulated. Jay Gunkelman, great show, man.
Well, thanks for having fun. I'll catch you another time.
See you, Jay. See you, Sky. Hi, Renita. Bye.
Hey, everyone. If you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you. Hey everyone, here's a quick message from our good old buddy Joshua Moore at Alternative Behavioral Therapy.
I'm preparing to do an introduction to QEEGD phenotypes. This is my first workshop on the topic, and this is just the introductory overview of the project. This is going to be very, very basic. So let's review each phenotype. We're just going to go through them one by one. If you look at the DSM 1, 2, or 3, and you look at the first chapter, it actually acknowledges that the DSM in mental health is just, quote, a descriptive adaptation, unquote. We're going to customize the interventions and tailor them to the individual's brain activity, not just applying the treatments or trainings to the individual's phenotype and maybe even their variants, but also customizing the protocols themselves to fit that person's individual unique frequency patterns. Maybe a dozen ways to have excessive energy in your nervous system, and then there's an infinite amount of ways to relate poorly to that excessive energy, which means that there is a lot of variations in what someone might call anxiety. And that doesn't mean that we're talking about the same thing when we're talking about anxiety. So complicated stuff. But when we look at a brain map, we get some basis for which we can start talking about what is this energy. Then we have to go to the client. We have to start talking to the client about what is your association to this specific kind of energy that I can see now. Then we get to care about things that insurance doesn't restrict us on. We get to care about like the person in a broader way. 85% improvement in mental health report following pairing a medication with a specific phenotype. Geez. Okay, have you seen 85% in any mental health studies for any medication? I'm going to be going over a whole bunch of different types of tests, assessments, and things that can be used that have things called neurocorrelates, which you saw some of those already, better success outcomes. That's what we really want. We need better predictive power. We need better individualization. That's what we want.